you are watching from in the chat box on the right side of the video. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual farm field trip. We are live today in Canby, Oregon at Willamette Egg Farms. My name is Bella and I'm a college student at Oregon State University and I'll be the moderator today. Before we start our tour today, you'll see the Q&A feature. This is where you can ask questions throughout the tour and I'll relay them to our tour guide. Please only type questions as this will help us to see the questions and make sure we get to as many of them as we can. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and tour guide for today's virtual field trip, Emily Badalega, farm manager at Willamette Egg Farms. Take it away, Emily.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm sorry I can't be on the farm, but it's really hard to connect to Zoom in a chicken barn or with all the noises going on. So you guys have me here today in my office. However, we have a video a little bit later that we're going to show. But as I said, my name is Emily. I'm with Willamette Egg Farms. I've been with Willamette Egg Farms for 4 years now. I went to high school here in Canby. I actually grew up only 2 miles down the road from this office. I raised chickens in high school, and I didn't really know where that was going to take me, but apparently it took me here. I started out with 6 chickens, and when I graduated high school, I ended up with over 100 and had a small business selling eggs on my own. And then when I went to college, I was going to either study plants or I was going to study chickens. But it turns out a lot less people study chickens. So I got a lot of scholarship dollars, which was really awesome. And that led me here. When I was a college student, I worked here at Willamette Egg Farms and I really loved the company. And 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to join the company. When I started here, I worked with our cage-free chickens that I really love. And then I also worked on some of those food safety programs that I'll talk about a little bit later, just to make sure we're doing a good job with our chickens, to make sure both we raise chickens safely so that you get a safe product and you don't get sick, and also that we take care of our chickens and that they don't get sick and that they're well cared for. And through the years, I've just expanded on my role, and now I actually oversee all of the farm. So I oversee both cage-free chickens, which lay brown eggs, and then I oversee the white chickens with the white eggs, and then all the baby chicks until they get to egg-laying age, and everything in between. So that's what I do now. We're going to show a quick little video so that I can show you a little bit about what it looks like inside of our operation. So go ahead and play that video.
It all starts early in the morning when the hen wakes up and lays her egg. The floor is sloped towards the front of the cage, and at the very front there's a little egg tray with a conveyor belt in it. So the egg just naturally rolls out onto the conveyor belt, and then all those 4-inch wide conveyors bring the eggs up to the front of the house, and then there's a system that takes the eggs from the belts and sets them on this big belt. This is the machine where it takes all the eggs and actually turns the pointed end of the egg towards us so that they're all facing the same direction. We go through the wash machine. After the candling booth, the eggs will go through the crack detector. And so that's where each egg actually gets tapped 24 times. It's similar to taking 2 eggs and tapping them together. If they're cracked, you'll hear kind of a dull thud. These are guides that actually just guide the egg down a little ramp where it rolls across a scale. based on their weight, they're directed to a packing lane. The packing lanes are set up either small, medium, large, extra large, jumbo. The carton gets dated, the lid gets closed, they get packed into their container, loaded on a pallet. The eggs will be transferred into our refrigerated trucks, and most folks in Oregon have seen our trucks. They're bright yellow and they've got the eggs on the side. And that's how we deliver those eggs to our local stores and restaurants.
Okay, I hope that video played well for you guys, because I think it's really nice to be able to see how our eggs get from the chickens into the grocery store. If that video ever didn't work, or you missed something, it is on YouTube. Willamette Egg Farms has a bunch of videos on YouTube. My favorite one is about 8 minutes, and it's a tour of our entire farm. And you get to see the caged chickens, the cage-free, more of that grading operation. So if you ever have time, go ahead and check that out. It's one of the best videos ever. It talks about different styles and why people prefer one versus the other. Very good video. But as he described in the video, the eggs are laid in the chicken houses and everything's pretty much automatic. I know I can't see you, but does anybody have chickens at home? Do you have to collect your eggs every day? Well, they figured out how to get all those eggs automatically collected on that belt. So really, it just brings them to the front of the house and we don't have to touch them too often unless anything gets hung up in the process. But we check those egg belts every day, but it's a way easier way of collecting eggs. I bet you wish you had them at home. Once those eggs get into our processing operation, they actually go through pretty much like a car wash. And when they have that car wash, they're taking off anything on the outside that could have gotten the egg dirty. Because you guys, at the end of the day, you don't want to get your eggs with a bunch of sawdust or chicken poop. You don't want that on your eggs. So they go through this nice little car wash. We have to be really careful with the eggs because we don't want to break them. We don't get paid for a broken egg. So that machine is very careful with those eggs, and we get them all the way into the carton. And you saw them drop down into those cartons. I was going to talk a little bit about some of the different places you might see our eggs. They talked on the video that yellow truck with those eggs is very common. So maybe some of you guys have seen that, but that's actually not where we sell most of our eggs. You don't see them in our own cartons. We definitely have them, but they're more common in other stores. Has anyone ever been to Safeway? This is a Safeway carton. We put our eggs in Safeway cartons. This one would be at like a Walgreens. This one is at Rite Aid. And our most common customer is actually, if you guys can see that, it says Great Value. And Great Value is actually the brand that Walmart uses. So a lot of people don't understand that if they go to Walmart in the area, they're actually getting very local eggs. We have another operation in Washington, and between us and Washington, Willamette Egg Farms supplies all of the Walmarts in Oregon, Washington, some in California, Montana, Idaho. Actually, one time I was on a trip in Alaska, and you bet I checked out the eggs, and they were ours. So we go all the way to Alaska. We even do Hawaii. We also do some Japan and some other like far off countries. But the most common customer we have is Walmart. And a lot of people are really surprised to hear that because, and I think this is funny, I've been to Walmart and I've seen our jumbo eggs in our own Willamette Egg Farms carton sitting right next to the Great Value brand carton, but they're the same eggs, but there's a little bit higher price for the Willamette because people just don't understand where their eggs are coming from. So it's really interesting to be able to talk to these farmers and understand that piece of it. Are there any questions right now, or I can keep going?
I have a few questions for you. So Christine wants to know, how do you know there are not chickens in the eggs?
That's a great question. So we don't have chickens in the eggs because we actually don't have any male chickens on the farm. We don't have any roosters. At the day of age, they're actually all females. And we can go through and you can see the difference between a male and a female. So as we handle these chickens, we can see that they're all female chickens because roosters don't lay eggs. Chickens don't actually need a rooster in order to lay eggs. So that's kind of cool. But if you ever had any doubts, there was that table. There's this table the eggs go over before they go in the carton. And there's a bright light underneath that table. And we call that a candling station. And that light allows us to see through the eggshell and make sure that there's nothing in there.
Awesome. I have one more question for you and then we can move on. And this question is from Nolan and Joaquin, and they want to know if there are different species of chickens.
Oh, Nolan, there are so many different species of chickens. At our farm, we actually just use, well, actually 3 breeds of chickens. We used 2 different ones that lay white eggs just because they're a little bit different. The actual breed is very similar to a white leghorn, if you've ever heard of it. And then we have brown chickens, and those are a Rhode Island red. And that's what we use at our farm, and that's what works for us. We've experimented with different breeds of chickens, but we found that these 3 that we use right now allow us to diversify a little bit, but really get the production that we want. Now, if like on a backyard farm, there are so many breeds of chickens, a lot of breeds of chickens. My favorite for a backyard producer, if you're familiar with chicken breeds, is actually very similar to a white leghorn, but it's called a blue Andalusian. So you guys ever need that information, hunt me down. But it's very similar to the white leghorn, but it's blue and really pretty and lays just as many eggs. Any other questions?
We'll do one more and then we'll have you move on just so we can get some more information to the students. So Sophie wants to know, how do you not crack the eggs?
Very carefully. So every process that we have is designed to really be a soft surface for the egg. When we transition the eggs from the barn to the belt that it comes across, it has to be a very smooth transition, and not cracking the eggs is actually one of the biggest jobs that we have. And sometimes just because we're dealing with machines, things will be sticking up where they're not supposed to. And then we'll notice through our production day that we have a lot of cracked eggs, and that's not good. So we have to do some investigation and some research to really figure out where those cracked eggs are coming from and how to prevent that. One of the things they mentioned in the video is that we have a crack detector. So even if it's got, I have one egg that has just a little hole on it. Even if it's got just a tiny little hole, we can detect that automatically out with that machine. And if we can do that, we can sort them into a different lane. But we get a number of how many cracked eggs we have. There's a certain amount that are just going to be cracked. We're dealing with chickens. They're not very careful. So sometimes that just happens. But if that happens, we want to know if it's coming from the chickens or if it's coming from us and just sort that out. Do you want me to move on to other information?
Go for it.
Okay. So I mentioned one of my biggest jobs when I started was making sure that both the chickens are safe and the people are safe. One of the biggest risks to your guys as people is a disease called salmonella. It's not very common anymore, but that's the main concern for food safety. And that actually happens with the chickens. The chickens are the ones who would be sick with this. And then it would get into the eggs. Nobody wants that. That's why we cook our eggs as a precaution. That's why we refrigerate our eggs. But my job here on the farm is to constantly test for that. So that's my responsibility. I see every single report. I'm right on top of it. That's why I am so happy with my own eggs. I never worry about being sick. I know that we're doing a good job because I personally oversee that and make sure that we're doing the right thing. But that's the biggest risk to people, that one thing. But even so, we're held to the same standards as someone who would make sandwiches. Sandwiches would have a lot of different ingredients from a lot of different places. And there's things we have to do like washing our hands and wearing the right clothing and not coughing on the eggs. We have to do all that stuff just anyway. But then on top of that, we have to make sure that there's a metal detector, that we don't get metal. But how would metal get in a chicken egg? But it's the same standard. So don't worry, we make sure. And we do a bunch of different stuff that those sandwich people still have to do, tracing back our ingredients. We make sure we know exactly where every one of these egg cartons comes from, who sells it to us, what date we got it, where they produced it. One of the things, I don't know if I have here's a good example of a carton. This on the end of the carton, you'll see information here. You probably look for it to see when you need to eat your eggs by, but that actually has more information. There's a number on it that says exactly what farm it was produced at. That's how you can tell it's my farm. And there's other information about what day it was laid. So if I go into the grocery store, I can actually, by this information right here, tell you when you should eat your eggs by, where it was produced, and what day the egg was laid. And so I can trace everything back just with this one carton. I think that's a lot of the information I had. Are there any more questions? Or I can always just keep talking, but sometimes it helps when I know what you guys want to hear.
Yeah, so this presentation is pretty short, so we just have time for one more question. And I think this is a question that I'm even interested to know the answers to. And this is from Miss Salim's class. And they want to know, how many eggs does the Willamette egg farms produce every year?
Oh man, so that's a lot. Why don't I break it down to one day? That's a much easier number to work with. So we have, and these are big numbers, so bear with me. But brown chickens, we have about 150,000 brown chickens. Chickens don't lay eggs every single day. It actually takes about 25 to 26 hours to lay an egg. So some days they're just gonna get ready to lay their egg and say, oh, no, I'm gonna just wait for tomorrow. So we say 90% production out of 150,000 chickens. So that's a lot of eggs, right? Just take off a little of 150,000. That's how many a day. Now on our white birds, we have a lot more white birds than we have brown birds. And that's just based on supply and demand. More people eat the white eggs. I mean, like there's plenty of eggs at the Walmart, right? We have a lot of customers. So we have a lot of chickens. We have about 1 million chickens. So take off 90%, and that's how many eggs we go through a day. That's how many eggs get put into a carton a day. So about, what is that, 900,000 eggs a day. It's a lot of eggs.
A lot of eggs. Yes. Awesome. So I just want to take a moment to thank Emily for spending time with us today to teach us more about Willamette Egg Farms. And like she said, make sure to check out their YouTube if you want to learn more. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to our virtual farm field trip today. We hope you all have a great day and a great rest of your school year.
Thank you.